Good afternoon still. This is Seth Moore coming back at you once more here on Anchor by Spotify and other host sites such as Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Amazon, Apple Music, and many, many more. Back again, and we're going to continue where we left off, and we were saying earlier how we will give you additional information as it related to our series of the BRICS Alliance and how all this stuff ties into our narrative. And not just a narrative, but proof and historical record. Okay, and so we're going to continue, and this way you have an opportunity to like, click, subscribe, and share the information that we're bringing to you. So we ask that you continue to support us and that you will continue to tune in as we bring you this information. And as mentioned, we had said earlier that how the U.S. and Britain had seized the oil reserves of Iran. And we're going to jump into that now so you can get an understanding how diabolical the U.S. and all these other European countries have been operating from in time immemorial and toppling other economies and nations. The U.S. and Iran have a complicated relationship. At the moment, it is tense, divisive, and delicate. Just over 60 years ago, things were not that different. In 1953, the Central Intelligence Agency, which I'm sure you all know, the CIA, organized a coup to oust Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. New details about the coup have now emerged after the CIA released a trove of documents regarding the mission named Operation Ajax. It is the first official admission by the spy agency of the part it played in directing the coup. And trust me, anybody with a half a brain and one eye knows that this information has been out a long time ago. And it says how the U.S. has a complicated relationship with Iran. The relationship wasn't all that complicated because, as you'll find out, what the U.S. and Britain did was to go in and take control of their oil, where the U.S. and Britain was getting 84% of the oil reserves out of Iran, while Iran was just getting 16%. Okay, so let's the landmark, and we'll see, and I'm kind of skipping around because I'm trying to give you succession in how all of this comes together and what roles that the U.S. and Britain played in seizing Iranian oil. The landmark nuclear deal struck in Vienna between Iran and a coalition of Western powers in 2015 aimed to reduce the global nuclear threat posed by Iran in return for Iran accepting constraints on its nuclear program. The P5+1 countries, the U.S., the U.K., France, China, Russia, plus Germany, and the European Union pledged to lift sanctions which had impoverished Iran for several decades. Listen to that. A statement by former U.S. President Barack Obama that Saudi Arabia would have to accept greater Iranian influence in the region as a result was also assumed to be a major policy shift for the U.S. But with the election of Donald Trump as president, this new power balance is under threat. A war of words between Washington in Tehran appeared to reflect the new administration's view of Iran as a global threat rather than merely a regional troublemaker. So think about this. The U.S., before Donald Trump came in office, the U.S. Had this program, P5+1, where the European Union pledged to lift sanctions off of Iran, which they have impoverished, okay, for several decades. But the stipulation was that under Barack Obama, most of Iran's oil, and it says here, a statement by the former U.S. President Barack Obama that Saudi Arabia, which is an ally of the U.S., would have to accept greater Iranian influence in the region as a result, was also assumed to be a major policy shift. So of course, the U.S., as always, is going to do things in their best interest by having Saudi Arabia to assume greater influence of Iranian region, in which you know what that means. It means the oil. Okay, the previous administration strategy was supposed to insulate the U.S. from conflict in the Middle East, which Obama believed had nothing to do with America's national interests. The nuclear deal would also ideally bring some peace in the region between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. Iran signed the deal on the assumption that it would remove the military threat against Iran in exchange for International Atomic Energy Agency having more control over Iran's nuclear program. Iran would keep a presence in the region. There would be a guarantee of security of the regime, and the U.S. would lift sanctions against it. Now listen to this, y'all. And it's been said before, and I give my brother a shout out, Omar Johnson, when he says, he had mentioned the Arab is the cousin of the European. So they're going to trust one another, but unfortunately, to Iran's demise, you already know that the U.S. is not going to keep any agreement or any treaty. You would be fooled to believe that. But the new U.S. administration appears to now want to again control the country's behavior after Iran carried out a missile test and continued its support for Houthi rebels in Yemen. The U.S. announced sanctions against companies and individuals suspected of being involved in Iran's nuclear program and suggested further pressure to come, as Trump himself tweeted. It is possible that Trump's policy will push Iran to conduct more ballistic missile tests, get involved more in Yemen and other new targets in the region, play a counterproductive role in Iraq, and possibly increase its aggressive cyber program. Okay, so listen up. Listen up. Stay with me. Official admissions aside, America's role in the event has long been recognized and seen as a major factor in the toxic state of U.S.-Iranian relations for over 60 years. After World War II and the beginning of the Cold War, there were two major factors for America when it came to managing Iran in the 1950s. First, that Iran remained a politically reliable geographic buffer which blocked Soviet access to the Persian Gulf. Second, that Iran's profitable oil reserves remained in the hands of Western companies. Ain't this some shit? Which had been in the country ever since the discovery of large reserves in 1908. Both of these priorities seem threatened by the elections of Mohammed Mossadegh, a moderate leftist politician who became Iran's prime minister in 1951, although Iran remained a constitutional monarchy with Mohammad Reza Shah staying on as head of state. Mossadegh's election marked an important step in the country's democratic evolution. One of Mossadegh's most significant political goals was to nationalize Iran's oil. Okay, and the reason for this is because before that the U.S. and Britain had took a hold earlier of the oil reserves in Iran, where they were getting 80% of Iranians' oil. And this is how Exxon, Shell, and there was a couple of other oil giants that were started up by Iranian oil. And this is not what is being said, but this is how these companies got started: Exxon, Shell, and I think it was Amoco, and a couple of other oil conglomerates. Okay, so it goes to show you how low down dirty they are. So let me and it says both of these priorities seem, I'm reading this again, seem threatened by the election of this new leader, Mohammed Mossadegh, a moderate leftist politician who became Iran's prime minister in 1951. Okay, although Iran remained a constitutional monarchy with Mohammad Reza Shah staying on as head of state, Mossadegh's election marked an important step in the country's democratic evolution because he wanted to nationalize their oil. A hugely popular move within Iran, it caused great consternation amongst American and British oil interests. This was a clear existential threat to their revenues. Listen to that. This was a clear threat to the revenues of the West, who went in and stole the oil in the first place. So it was a clear threat to the revenues. And, in business is dirty a lot of times. But at the stake of war and killing people as well, listen on. Presenting Mossadegh as a threat to American global fight against communism, British intelligence services conspired with the CIA to undermine his regime. They wanted to replace him with the more pliant General Fazlollah Zahedi, acting under the direction of the autocratic Shah. Catching wind of the plot, Mossadegh had a number of conspirators arrested, and the CIA decided to call off the operation. Listen to this, but check it out. A previously undisclosed telegram was sent by the CIA officials in Washington to instruct their assets in Iran on August 18th, 1953. It read, operations has been tried and failed. We should not participate in any operation against Mossadegh which could be traced back to the U.S. and further compromise future relations with him, which may become only course of action left open to U.S. Dirty boy, I'm telling you. But the CIA agent running Operation Ajax, Kermit Roosevelt, he's the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt now. The agent, they always hire people from that bloodline and to do dirty, low down shit. Pardon the French. He was the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt, the CIA agent. Kermit Roosevelt was undeterred. He decided, even though the U.S. said, stand down for a minute, let this, because he got wind of our plot, what we trying to do, stand down for a little bit, and then we'll come back in and we'll create something to throw him off. But he was undeterred. He said he decided to ignore his instructions and proceed with the coup regardless, relying on networks established by British intelligence services. The CIA initiated a wave of propaganda and paid for protests that quickly destabilized the country. Dirty mother freakers. See how that's how they do. That's exactly how they do. They'll send people in. They paid money. They paid money to create a coup and initiated a wave of propaganda. And like I said, they paid for protests that quickly destabilized the country. Amid the chaos, General Zahedi mobilized the army to restore order. He used military force to oust Mossadegh. Now, this is the guy that was bringing the country back on a national level to establish the oil on a national level. So what did they do with him? He used the military force to oust Mossadegh government and to place the prime minister under arrest so that the U.S. could put in their puppet leader, right? The newly released documents also revealed that the high-profile Ayatollah Al-Ghashim Qassani played a key role in the overthrow of Mossadegh. CIA report, fearing that the instability of Mossadegh's government would pave the way for a communist takeover, Qassani requested money from the CIA to counter the prime minister's influence. On the day of the coup, Qassani's reporters took to the streets to topple Mossadegh's government. The Shah then took on full dictatorial powers, instituting an era of brutal repression and widespread human rights abuses that would sour Iranian receptions of American influence for decades. These some dirty bastards. The American coup turned out to be one of the most pivotal events in modern Middle Eastern history. It laid the foundation for the nationalist backlash of the Iranian Revolution in 1979. 26 years later, and now in 2017, relations between the two countries remain strained. The release of the new documents provides official confirmation of the extent of the CIA's involvement in Iran's history and how that moment continues to inform its present. My goodness. I'm telling you, these some dirty people, y'all. They at any cost for power. They kill children. They don't care who you are. They will, if you in their way, they will kill you, and then they will get on TV and the news and have their news outlets and their media their media people, and they will get on there and they'll say, you know what? This guy over here, he was creating weapons of mass destruction, and they was poisoning their people with poison gas. They lie their asses off. And meanwhile, they're doing all the devilish. Wow. Hold on, we're not done yet. And what they'll do, they're famous at this, y'all. What they'll do after they create all of the chaos, then they'll get on the news and they'll create these stories to make it believable to you, to the lay person who don't know no better. And they'll be like, yeah, they're over there trying to kill people, and people run off, start talking without doing any kind of research. Yeah, that guy over there, he poisoning people, and you believe it, and you believe in the same people who had you in chains, had your grandmama and your granddaddies in chains, and you believe in them. It's amazing. It really is amazing. It is amazing. See, but you know what's happening now? All of this stuff is coming to a head. And that's why these European nations right now, bruh, They're going to suffer more than you've ever seen. They are. It's on now. It's on, and they're at their end. I'm telling you, they're at their end. It's over. Game over. Because even the creator is tired. You've gone all around the world creating havoc since you stepped foot on the shores of Americas. You know, wherever you go, you create mayhem, murder. I mean, you name it. Innocent children dying and starving. Okay. And then people say, "Oh, yeah, but they're human. They're humanitarian. They'll go around the world and they feed people." Yeah, you could have a bag of food. You could have a bag of food for someone and then have a gun at their head at the same time. Okay, so now, um, what we're gonna do, as I told you before, we're gonna give you this, and we're gonna go to the next portion of this, where this leads up this Iranian relationship, if you want to call it that, with Iran, with the U.S. and Britain, and how they toppled them and took the, seized the oil and so forth, and how this leads up to the Iraqi war, and we're gonna come back with that, and how the U.S. used Iraq to go in and to bomb Iran. How the U.S. used Iraq. You heard me correctly. How the U.S. used Iraq with Saddam Hussein, who was on the United States payroll, with them arming Iraq with weapons and so forth. And usually what they do, the U.S. always, he plays both sides. They'll send weapons to Iraq. They'll send weapons to Iran. And then they use Saddam Hussein, as I mentioned. I'm very passionate about this. That's why you might hear me repeat myself. They used him to go in and to bomb these people and to kill innocent people. And innocent people, and I'm not going to tell you all, but innocent people. And you know what happened. And all of this leads up to 9/11. Think about that. All of this leads up to justify getting oil reserves. And most people in America know this. And how you sacrifice innocent people's lives. So, stay with us. And again, this is Seth Moore here on Anchor by Spotify by way of iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Amazon, Apple Music, and many, many more. So we'll be back. Stay with us.